Dear friends, welcome to this week's virtual drasha. This week we have the incredible privilege to read the parashiyos of Tazria, Metora. And the parashiyos deal primarily with the halachos of tsaras. We loosely translate tsaras as leprosy, but in fact leprosy is an actual spiritual ailment. Tsaras was really a physical ailment, but was the manifestation of a deeper spiritual sickness. The Gemara discusses the various averos, the various sinful behaviors that kalita tsaras, most notably amongst them, lashon hara, negative speech, slander about another individual. And in this respect, tsaras was a true gift. What do I mean? I think we often go through life and we wonder to ourselves, like, how am I doing in my ruchnius? In other words, if I were to come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu for my annual review, which I guess we do at Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu for my job review. How am I doing? What would be, am I fair, poor, excellent, meet standards, exceed standards? Would I be entitled to an end of year bonus? How am I doing in this incredible, beautiful, and holy endeavor of ruchnius? And the incredible part is, we often don't know. I mean, we kind of know deep down how we're doing spiritually, but it's not like I get a direct communication from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in terms of how I'm doing, what I'm doing well, what I'm not doing well. The power, the profundity, and it sounds strange, but the gift of tsaras is it was a clear divine indication about how you were doing. Because if you were stricken with tsaras, that was an indication something's broken. You need to fix it. And in fact, again, like I said before, we even know the averos, which were somehow connected with tsaras. So in that respect, although of course no one, like feedback most times, no one really wants feedback, even if they say they want feedback. No one really wants it, especially if it's quote unquote constructive or in any way critical. But when we get it, it's a tremendous gift. Because it's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of telling us, listen, you're doing fantastic and you're beautiful and I love you, but you need to improve this. You need to work on this. You need to focus on this. And as such, it truly was an incredible gift. And the Torah, it describes the behavior of the Metora. So remember again, the Torah spends an incredible amount of time discussing what is tsaras, what type of blemish, what type of lesion, when is it problematic, the process, the waiting process, the checking process. But then the Torah says the following. This is in Perek Yod Gimel, chapter 13, verse 45, pasuk memhei. Vatsarua asher bo hanega. So again, the tsarua, the person afflicted with tsaras, who has the tsaras affliction, begadav yu perumim. He has to tear his clothing. V'rosho yiyeh parua. He has to let his hair grow. V'al safam ya'ateh. And he should cover. Literally, it means he should cover himself with his cloak up until his upper lip. V'tamei tamei yikra. And he has to call out tamei tamei. He has to announce to the world that he is tamei. So obviously, this is very reminiscent of mourning practices. Tearing his clothing, kriya, letting his hair grow, and aval is not permitted to engage in certain personal grooming activities. And this idea of pulling his cloak over his head. So the Gemara Maseches Moed Katan discusses that this is actually one of the practices that mourners used to observe. They would pull their cloak essentially to their upper lip, so they would cover their eyes, so they really wouldn't be able to see anything around them. And this was a sign of a mourning practice. And it's interesting, I want to draw your attention to that particular detail. Not as much as a mourning practice, but vis-a-vis the Metora. Right? So the Metora needs to walk around, and obviously he's in a state of mourning, because he has done something that has required HaKadosh Baruch Hu to bring this supernatural event upon him. And not only that, his actions have distanced himself from his family, because you can't live in the same house with the rest of your family when you have tsaras. You have to live outside of the camp. His actions has distanced himself from his kehillah, from his community, from the klal. Badad Yeshev, he lives alone. And this is dramatic. So remember again, this is not simply a small infraction, but this is something major, and it tears you literally out of the fabric of your daily life. That is a cause for mourning. And that is a cause for incredible, just like taking a step back, and introspecting and looking at, how am I living my life? What am I doing? How do I need to do better? In other words, how did I get here? And what do I need to extricate myself from this situation and ensure that I never get back to this spot in life again? An incredible, it's not just moments, but it's days and potentially weeks of profound and intensive soul searching. But what struck me amongst all of this is this practice of taking the cloak and pulling it over your head. This idea, again, like I mentioned, not as much of a mourning practice, but more for the Metora. Right? The tearing of his clothing, I understand. The letting his hair grow, I understand. He's in mourning. Tamei tamei yikra. He has to announce his tumah to everyone. But this idea that he takes his cloak, pulls it over his eyes to his upper lip, what's the pshat? So there's a beautiful insight by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in last week's Parsha Shmini. Torah speaks about the halachos of kashrus. And the Torah says, Kol holich al gochon, whatever slithers on its stomach, v'chol holich al arba, anything, any insect, right, reptile that walks on 4 feet. And again, the Torah says, you can't eat it, lo sochlum ki sheketz haim, for it is a sheketz, right? It's a creepy, crawly, disgusting thing. Okay. Now Rashi points out, what is this thing? This holech al gachon, what is this thing that's slithering on its stomach? Rashi says, zeh nachash. This is a snake. And the Rebbe says something very interesting. He says, why is it that the snake is referred to by this identity, right? In other words, a snake has a lot of qualities. It bites, it's true, it slithers, but it sheds its skin. Why is it that whenever the Torah refers to the snake, it always refers to as kol holech al gochon? It slithers on its stomach. And the Rebbe says something absolutely amazing. He quotes from the Zohar, and the Zohar says, Nochosh da yetzer hara. Whenever you see the snake is always a metaphor for the Yetzer Hara. Now, why is that? Now, the way the Zohar understands it in a very beautiful way is because what does the Yetzer Hara often do? The Yetzer Hara gets you to focus just like on the material, carnal, earthly pleasures, right? Your stomach, right? The Yetzer Hara slithers on its stomach. The Yetzer Hara says, come on, worry about keeping your stomach full, worrying about the stuff on the ground, worry about the earthly, material, pleasurable, carnal stuff. And then when you do that, it totally distracts you from focusing on his spiritual pursuits. But the Rebbe takes it a step further. And the Rebbe says something absolutely beautiful. The Rebbe says, and he quotes the pasuk from Yeshaya. He says, the ikar avoda of a Jew is su'u marom einechem uru'u mibara eila. The avoda of a Jew, says the Navi Yeshaya, is look upwards. Always have your head upwards. Always look upwards. Now the Navi Yeshaya says, look upwards so you could remember who the Creator was. Look upwards so you could have God awareness. Look upwards so shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. Because when you have God awareness, when you're constantly looking upwards, saying, Mi baraya, who created all of this? All of this, the world, all of this, me. Who created all of this? And I know that it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu that keeps me on the right path in life. But again, the Rebbe takes it a step further. It's not just about God awareness. Rather, the Rebbe says something amazing. He says, Sha'adam tzarech lalos rosho. A person has to live life with their head always looking upward. Why? Because Omer HaYetzer Hara la'adam lahorid rosho u'lios holech sach va'ayidezeh yachol HaYetzer Hara lahorid es ha'adam. The Yetzer Hara says one thing: look downwards. Look downwards. Now, of course, looking downwards can be just look at the earth, look at the physical, look at the material, look at the carnal. Don't pay attention to spiritual pursuits. And meanwhile, the Navi says, no, se'u einechem marom, always look upward. But it's not just about material versus spiritual. It's about looking downward means all you see is what is in front of you in life. And looking upward represents looking towards potential. What can be? You know that expression, the sky is the limit? Well, like everything else that is good in this world, we had it first. It's the Navi Yeshaya. Su'u einechem marom. What is the Navi saying? Not just look upward to create and cultivate a constant God awareness, of course. But look upward because upward, that's where you can get to. That's your potential. There's no ceilings in life except the ones that you create for yourself. Yes, there are external circumstances that are visited upon us. But in terms of your self-actualization, in terms of who you want to be, what you want to be, the sky is the limit. Su'u einechem marom. So listen to this. There's a constant tug of war. And I'm in the middle. The Yetzer Hara, the Nachash, is saying, look downward. Come on, stop it. And that's why the Nachash is holich al gachon. It slithers on its stomach. You know, when you slither on your stomach, I don't know, I guess you could try it out. When you slither on your stomach, you have very little head mobility, right? So when you slither on your stomach, really what you're going to see is what's in front of you. The Yetzer Hara, the Nachash, says, come on, holich al gachon, slither on your stomach. What you are is what there is right now in front of you, right? And enjoy it. Maximize it, make the most of it, because this is what you are, this is who you got. So I've got the Nachash, I've got the Yetzer Hara, telling me just to slither on my stomach and just to live in the here and now. And then I've got the Navi Yeshaya whispering in my ear, not just the Navi Yeshaya. I have HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispering in my ear, Su'u einechem marom. Look up, look up. Do you know what you can be? Do you know who you can be? Do you know what you could accomplish? The sky is the limit. Yes, cultivate a constant sense of God awareness, because when you have God awareness in your life, It definitely keeps me on the straight, or at least has a better chance of keeping me on the straight and narrow. But live life with full cognition of your awareness. Live life with constant awareness of what you have the ability to do, your potential. And I'm in the middle of this tug of war. The Yetzer Hara Nachash telling me, just slither on your stomach. Just look down. Just look down. Here and now. Carpe diem, in a bad way, right? Just, eat, feast, live, die, whatever. Just maximize what you've got in front of you. All you have is what's right in front of you. And ultimately, again, Yetzer Hara Tov, Navi Yeshaya, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look upward, the sky's the limit. Of course, this is the tug of war we live with every single day. And to be honest, sometimes the snake wins, and sometimes Yeshaya wins. It just depends on the day. It doesn't depend on the day. It depends on me. Now we circle back to our Metora. Our Metora is someone who has made a really terrible mistake. And as a result of that mistake, like I said before, he's removed himself from his family, from his community, from the klal. So what does he do in his process of tshuva? Because this whole process, the whole purification process, it's not punitive for the Metora, but rather, again, it's cathartic. It's supposed to be rehabilitative. The goal is tshuva. What does he have to do? He has to take his cloak and he has to put it over his eyes. Because what is he showing himself? I wasn't looking upward. All I was doing was looking downward. That's all. Just looking downward the whole time. That's why I made this mistake. Whether it's Lashon Hara or whatever it is, why did I allow myself to get caught up in such negativity? Why did I allow myself to get caught up in such self-debasement? It's very simple. Because I allowed myself to slither on my stomach. I allowed myself to become a chassid of the nachash. I just saw what was in front of me and I forgot to look upward. And at the end of the day, says the Rebbe, is that not the ultimate part of his tshuva? So as part of his tshuva, he just got to walk around with his cloak over his eyes. I know what I did. I know exactly I know how I got here. It's not a mystery. I got here because I stopped looking upward and only looked downward. I got here because I covered my eyes. I got here because, again, I followed the Nachash and I didn't follow Yeshaya. I got here because I chose to slither as opposed to Su'u Einechem Marum. And that's part of his tshuva process. And dear friends, that's the question, that's the shaila, that's the journey that each of us have to decide each and every day. Who's your Rebbe? Is it going to be the Nachash or is it going to be Yeshaya? Who are you going to listen to? Am I going to make myself filled with a life that's just slithering on my stomach, just focusing on the now, finding happiness in just the material, not really focusing on who and what I could be, but just kind of like eyes down, focus on what is here and that's it? Or am I going to find the courage to look upwards and to realize the sky is truly the limit? I can make of myself whatever. If I could dream it for me, then I can do it for me. That's the decision. And it's a decision we have to make every day. And it's a decision we have to make really in every single moment. Who's my Rebbe? The Nachash or the Navi Yeshaya? To slither or to look upwards? The Metora made the wrong decision, and as such needs a process to help him course correct. I'm sure at various times we've all made the wrong decision as well. But halavai, as we enter into this beautiful Shabbos, and as we enter into this new month of Iyar, we should find the courage, we should find the strength, in Miras Hashem, to look upward, to follow the voice of the Navi Yeshaya, and to choose wisely. Wishing everyone a good Chodesh, a good Erev Shabbos, and a beautiful Shabbos Kodesh.